Alright, so we are in investments and loans MSF4 once again, but in this video we are looking at credit cards. So credit cards, here are some definitions to know and to be aware of. Credit cards generally use compound interest to calculate interest on purchases made. So that is why we're using this formula here. We can know it's the compound interest formula because we have a plus there. That plus represents adding or compounding money. And we know that this formula here is used to isolate the interest. And we do that by getting the future value and minusing the present value. And that will give us the difference between the two, which is interest. We need to know that the credit cards generally use a daily interest rate. So they charge interest daily, which means that if you were given an interest rate per annum, which is annual, that is yearly, you have to divide that by however many days are in the year, which is 365, to get the daily interest rate. So that's something to remember when you're figuring out the rate. Just check if they want the daily interest rate, which 99% of the time they will want the daily interest rate. Then we know that the future value is the amount owing on a card, or the amount that it will come to after interest is added to it. The PV is the principal value, or the purchase price of what you made. So if you used your credit card to buy groceries and the groceries came to a total of $20, then your PV would be $20. And say the interest that you earned on that $20 was $3, then your FV would be $23. Once again, we know that the R equals the rate of interest, N is the number of time periods, and I is the interest. So let's have a look at some examples. So here we have Samantha. She has a credit card with a compound interest rate of 18% per annum with no interest-free period. So just quickly, credit cards, there generally will be two options. There will be a interest-free period, interest-free, or there'll be no interest-free period. And if it's interest-free, it means for a certain amount of time, maybe like 2 weeks, you don't have to pay interest on that 2 weeks. And then in the no interest free, from the day you buy it, you have to pay interest. There's no free period without interest. The interest free period might not be 2 weeks. That was just an example. You'll just have to read the question to see how long their interest free period is. So if we keep reading along, Samantha used her credit card to pay for clothing costs of $280. She paid the credit card account 14 days later. What is the total amount she paid for the clothing, including the interest? So we need to, the first thing to do, I'll write down let me undo that. So step 1, as always, is to write out our formula. We know our formula to be FV equals PV because it's compound, 1 plus R to the power of N. The second step to do when you're doing credit cards is to calculate the daily interest rate. And if you remember, the daily interest rate is the annual or per annum interest rate divided by 365. So it can look like 18% divided by 365, or it could be 18 divided by 100, because that will give us our percent, 0.18. So 0.18 equals 18%, 365, or you could actually calculate the fraction. And if you calculated the fraction, you would get 0.000 493, blah, 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 blah. Generally, we will use this one here, the fraction, because if you use this decimal number here, there are lots of decimals after the 3, lots of points after the 3, and you might get confused, you might accidentally miss one. There's just a higher chance for mistake if you use this one here rather than the fraction. So the fraction is the one we are going to use. And once we've done that, our third step will be to sub in the information into our formula. So the future value is what we are trying to find, but we know the present value to be 280. That's how much she paid at the present time for the close. 1 plus our rate, which we in the second step calculated, and to the power of 14 days. We don't have to change our n because our n is 14 days, and our interest in step 2 we calculated to be daily, so they are both in the same terms of days, so we don't have to change anything there. So now we can just go ahead and put that into our calculator, and when you do that, you will get a value of 281.939, and if we round up to 94. So she paid a total of 280 for the close, but because she paid it using a credit card, she'll have to pay interest, and her interest will come to a total of the future value minus present value, and in this case that would be 281.94 minus 280, so the interest would equal $1.94. So she paid an extra $1.94 in interest. The question, what is the total amount she paid for the clothing, including the interest? So the interest is already included in this answer here. So you don't have to do this part down the bottom. I just did that to demonstrate what the interest would be, which is $1.94. All right, let's have a look at the next question. So in this question, we have a credit card statement. So a credit card statement is something that might come in the mail, might be emailed, but you would get something that looks like this, and it'll have all the information there, and you just have to answer the questions based on the information given. So let's have a look at question A. What is the credit card number? So we can have a look, and we see that the credit card account number is what the MasterCard is. So if you have ever looked on a key card or a credit card, it will have a value or an identification account number. That's generally placed next to the card. So if we're using a MasterCard, then our account number will be here. So in this case, our account number is 5353180100010001. Question B, what is the opening balance? Well, you just simply have to read it from the statement. And if you have a look, it says opening balance here. And so if we go across, our opening balance is 207.72. Question C, what is the payment due date? Then you just have to have a look, and it says here payment due date. So our payment due date will be the 30th of November. Question D, what is the minimum payment? If you have a look here, minimum payment. So the minimum payment is $25. And what is the closing balance? You just simply look here once again, closing balance, 460.14. So that's just reading a credit card statement to answer questions. Sometimes if the question is a little bit harder than that, there might be a missing value, like the interest might be missing, and you just have to calculate the interest. So you just look at the credit card statement and do step-by-step calculations to calculate the interest. The rate might be missing, you might have to find the rate. The closing balance might be missing, and then you just have to find the closing balance. So this is just to be aware that questions can involve credit card statements, and this is what a statement will look like. It'll have payment due dates, the minimum payment, the opening balance, the account number. So that they're all information on a credit card statement, and you'll just have to answer questions according to the statement.